Welcome to What Happens in Vegas. I am your host, Neal Maligno, and today's episode is the 4 reasons why the Raiders will still make the playoffs. Still, even with this bad start of 1-4, the Raiders will make the playoffs. Trust the process, Raider Nation. Let's get to number one. The Raiders have a favorable schedule. If we look ahead to the Raiders' schedule, the next game this week in Week 7 is the Texans. You have the Saints, the Jaguars, the Colts, the Broncos, the Seahawks, the Chargers, Rams, Patriots, Steelers, 49ers, and Chiefs. That's a favorable schedule right there. The start to the season was rough. It didn't go out how we had planned, but this schedule is winnable. There is winnable games on here. Most of them are totally winnable. Obviously, there's some tough matchups. They're not all easy, but there's also some interesting, fun games on here that are fun to see, like the Patriots game. We'll see how that one plays out with Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick. But this is a fun schedule left, but it also leaves plenty of hope, plenty of reason that the Raiders can run a lot of wins up on this on this season. So while the start is not what we had hoped for, right? It's nowhere near what we hoped for as a 1-4 team, but there is definitely a lot of hope in this schedule. So that's reason number one. The schedule is winnable. Number two, Josh McDaniels is now figuring out how to run this offense. Obviously, again, the results haven't totally translated to a coach who, has his handle on the offense, who has his handle on the team as a whole, on the play calling of how it's all going to play out, but it's starting to come to fruition. Don't forget here, when you look, the Raiders did beat the Broncos. Obviously, every other game they've been pretty close. So, like, we're inching closer and closer. It's gotten better and better in terms of the results, and you don't have to see it just in the score. When it comes to Josh McDaniel and his hold on this offense, it's more about how the game looks, right? And some of the games we've seen, like, total opposites or flips of the script come from that one half to the next. Play calls out, you're kind of questioning, like, why is this happening? Why is this guy getting all these targets? What is Devontae Adams, disappearing in games from? But as the season goes along here, it's making more and more sense to me that he's figuring it out. He's figuring it out. The team believes in it. And that's the other thing is, along with Josh McDaniels figuring out how to call the plays for this offense, the offense believes in Josh McDaniels' ability to call this offense. So that's a big part of Josh McDaniels getting it, is also the team believing that he's getting it and that he's got it. He's making it make sense for everybody. So that is another one. And involved in there, of course, is little strings of injuries and stuff that have made it more difficult for Josh McDaniels to call the offense. But as guys get healthy out of the break, I believe that'll get a lot better. On to reason number three. The roster has overcame much worse. Last season alone, a lot of this roster is intact from last season. Any additions that we have besides rookies, obviously, are guys who are winners, who come from winning organizations, whether that be the Packers, the Patriots, so on and so on. This team has a great, strong veteran presence, a young, mature player presence, and they've all gone through some adversity. And again, this Raiders team, as we know, had to go through the John Gruden, situation, the Henry Ruggs situation, the interim head coach situation. A lot of them had to go from moving from one, city to the next for the team, a new arena, all kinds of rest for other players. It's just been a lot for this team. They've overcome a lot, and they've done it last season. They're totally fully capable of able to do it this season. That's one thing when you project out. You can project for something that hasn't happened yet and still feel strong about it. But I feel even way more strong about something that I'm projecting when I know it's happened before. So this Raiders team as a whole, this roster for the most part, has overcome a lot of adversity, even as Raiders. And so I believe that this team can overcome the slow start of the 1-4 season. It's still early on, so we don't want to get too caught up in it. But that's my number three reason: is this roster as it is has overcome previous issues like this in the past, way bigger than a 1-4 start. So I believe that they're built for this kind of turnaround. Reason number four, and I think this is the most important one, probably the most important one. This team, in the 4 games they've lost, have lost by 1 score or less. That has magnitude. That matters. That lets you know that as good as the teams they've played are, they still only lost by 1 score or less. They've been competing in every single game, even with all the things you want to complain about, all the issues with the refs. Josh McDaniels sucks. This guy sucks. That guy's hurt. This, that. No matter what you want to blame it on, the coaching staff doesn't have control. Josh McDaniels didn't call the game right. He didn't make the right call. Anything that you want to complain about, every game that they've lost was by one score or less. Think about that. Think about how close that is. That could easily even flip the other way. Any of those games, those other teams can be saying the same thing. Well, we only lost by one score to the Raiders. We only lost by one score or less to the Raiders. We could easily have had that game. So if they could say that, we could say that. So the Raiders could have easily beat the Cardinals. We've seen them, smacking them early on. They could have beat the Chiefs. They were smacking them early on. They could have beat the Titans. That game was decided by 2 points. The game against the Chargers to open the season was, I think, 5 points. I think it was a 5 point game, 24-19. I believe that's what it was. So yeah, all the games were close. All the games were super close. It's not like we were getting blown out in any of them. We weren't, outskilled in any of them. So to make this short and sweet, and to wrap up my 4 reasons why the Raiders still had the opportunity to make the playoffs here and why you should still believe in them. Don't get down on our Raiders. Believe in them, Raider Nation. 1, favorable schedule going forward. 2, Josh McDaniels is calling this offense better. He's getting a handle on it. 3, this roster has overcame much worse, much more adversity in the past and proved that they can overcome it, not just deal with it, but overcome it. And number 4 is that every game that they've lost this year has been lost by a one score or less. Again, Chargers 19-24 we lost. Cardinals 29-23. Titans 24-22. Beat the Broncos, and then Chiefs 30-29. You're talking about the best team in the league, basically. About one of the best teams, right? No question about it. Patrick Mahomes has done crazy things all year long. So here we are. The Raiders can overcome all this. Trust the process, Raider Nation. Do not give up. Don't go around blaming everybody. The Raiders are going to turn this thing around. I'll see you in the playoffs. What happens in Vegas is Raiders football.